Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here to the Launchpad and our live launch coverage of, can you believe it's the third rocket launch of the day. We are glad to have you joining us here and broadcasting live from our TOP Space Coast studio, and it's great to have so many of you joining us here. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us. Take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from as well. We'll do some shout-outs here. We are now under 33 minutes and counting till liftoff of today's Worldview Legion, 5 and 6 launch from Historic Launch Complex at 39A here in Florida. Now, believe it or not, it is a gorgeous view outside my window here at the Space Coast studio, but over just 14 miles away, it is incredibly fogged in for today's flight, to the point that you can't see the pad from the press site at 3 miles. You can see it on the radar there. You can see that kind of layer of cloud lingering over the Space Coast. We are still reportedly go for launch. We had a good look at the weather, and it looks like we are green across the board right now, but we are keeping a close eye on that, as there is a thick layer of fog sitting on the Space Coast at L-32 minutes. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad Network, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. We're glad to have you joining us for what will be the 25th launch of 2025. This will be SpaceX's 16th flight of their launches this year. The second flight for Booster 1073, which is actually going to be going on what will be its fourth flight in its lifetime, previously supporting GOES-U, Starlink 12-5, 12-11, and now Worldview Legion 5 and 6. Taking a look towards that countdown launch sequence, we are now into that count, that go-no-go from the propellant loading complete, and now at L-31 minutes, 5 seconds. Stage 1 should be getting RP-1 and liquid oxygen loaded, and Stage 2 should be having its RP-1 loaded at this time as well. But with the fog, we don't really have an idea what to be able to see here today, and it's going to be even more interesting because it's a return to landing site today. So Booster 1086 will be coming back down to Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, just a few miles south of Historic Launch Complex 39A, and of course we'll be staying live with you all the way through the flight and down through booster touchdown, and we're hoping to be able to stay live through deployment as well. It depends if Worldview has asked SpaceX to hide that deployment or not. If we do stay live, deployment will occur in 2 sets. The first one will deploy 47 minutes, 18 seconds into flight. The second will deploy 1 hour, 49 minutes, 53 seconds into flight. So during those coast phases, we're going to be answering your guys' comments and questions that you send in the chat. You can start doing those now, and we're great to have you all here. Scott, Titusville, Florida, right across the Indian River from the Launchpad. That is true. Mark Wandry, Zach, how are you doing? Is this a high northern route? I haven't checked the launch trajectory. I need to do that, so bear with me for that, but I am doing well. But if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember. I know I looked at it once. Bear with me, and I'll try to get that verified information. Scott, the booster is landing back at the Cape. Boom, boom. Exactly. We can't wait to hear that boom, boom here on the studio. We are looking at trying to find ways to bring that to you guys, even on air, even when we're here at the studio and not out at the press site. As always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll work on answering those live. We are now at L-29 minutes and counting. As you can see in that countdown sequence, that next event is at the T-16 minute mark. That's when liquid oxygen will begin flowing onto the second stage, liquid oxygen flowing onto the first stage currently, and the RP-1 fuel flowing onto both the first and second stage at this time. We are waiting for SpaceX to begin their live coverage as well. They're going to be doing that right around the 15-minute to launch mark. So once they do, we will patch them in so you guys can listen in to SpaceX Mission Control for an update. We did want to hear from you guys, where you guys are watching from, and I saw some people drop that in the chat, so we'll do some shout-outs here. We got Princess is watching from Canada, Penny's in North Carolina, Mike is in Columbus, we got Remy G in Louisiana, Great to have you here. I guess Scott was saying he's in Titusville, right across from the Indian River. It's great to have you here. Mista is from Dresden, Germany. Craig in Langley, BC. David is in Michigan, USA. Great to have you here. Mark Wandry is near Nags Head, North Carolina. Hoping to see it. That would be awesome. Hopefully you have some more visibility than we do. It would be really interesting. We were up early this morning for the Starlink launch, and we're only about 13, 14 miles from the pad or so here at the studio, and stood outside, couldn't see anything. There wasn't even the faintest glow. And then about a minute later, you had this very, very small rumble, but even that was very minimal. It was a very unique launch, knowing that there's a rocket going up, but not being able to see or hear it. So we're hoping, maybe with it being daytime, hopefully some of that fog will burn off, and we'll at least get to see a little bit of a glow or streak across the horizon, and then more importantly, see that booster falling back to Earth as it does a return to landing site at landing zone 1. But you can see right there on your screen, those streaky white clouds, that is fog currently sitting on the Space Coast. It does look like it's dissipating, so here's hoping that it continues to dissipate over the next 27 minutes or so. Aiden's tuning in from Manchester, New Hampshire. We got Michael somewhere in Kansas. We got Armored in Newfoundland. Great to have you here. SpaceX has confirmed that propellant loading has begun on it. The vehicle teams and FOG are currently go for launch. That is what has come in from SpaceX. So we will hopefully be able to have a liftoff here in about 26 minutes from now. Now, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we will work on answering those live while we continue through today's stream. We are expecting, as I said, SpaceX to begin their broadcast about 15 minutes to lift off. So once they do that, we will, of course, patch them in. We also got it pinned in the chat. Do you believe in space and believe that space is better together? Then we are looking for you. We're super excited to be expanding the TLP crew, bringing on some more moderators to help with the chat, but more importantly, helping with our production. So looking at broadcast producers, video editors, space history writers. So take a moment. If you're interested in a volunteer position, you can be located basically anywhere in the world. Prefer that you're over 18. You can click that link while you've got some time before liftoff here. Fill out that application, and we'll be starting interviews here in the very near future. Catching up on the questions that are coming in the chat. It's been a while since we've watched an RTLS yet. I'm not sure if we've had one this year yet, actually. I know we've had them in Vandenberg, but I don't think we've had a return to landing site yet for this year here on the Space Coast. So it's exciting to have those coming back to the Space Coast. That nice that it's not at 3 in the morning though. That's appreciated. Catching up on your guys' questions. L minus 24 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. You can keep sending those in the chat. I'm going to work on patching a couple things in, so stand by and stay with us right here on the launch pad as we count down to launch a Worldview Legion 5 and 6. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of SpaceX Worldview Legion 5 and 6, set to launch from historic Launch Complex 39A at NASA Kennedy Space Center here in Florida. We are waiting for SpaceX to begin their live coverage, but if you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us. SpaceX did confirm a short time ago that propellant loading is underway at the launch site, and that the rocket, payload, pad, and fog are all go for flight. It is a very foggy day. We're looking at a close look at some of the radar coming in from NASA Kennedy Space Center and the Space Force here. We are green across the board for wind and lightning, so that's a good sign. And we're keeping an eye on those clouds, so they'll likely be able to fly. We just might not be able to see it here. L-14 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. It's great to have so many of you tuning in here. On board today are Worldview Legion 5 and 6, which are being built by SSL. Worldview Legion is a digital globe's next generation of Earth observation satellites, and they're going up to low Earth orbit. Taking a look ahead in the countdown, though, payload deployment we are hoping to be able to see here today. The first deployment will occur 47 minutes, 18 seconds after launch. The other 1 hour, 49 minutes, 53 seconds. So if SpaceX is going to keep live views, we will stay live as well and be hopeful to be able to see those deployments once they're up in low Earth orbit. But as always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. We'll work on answering those live while we continue through today's broadcast. And if you haven't yet, share out the stream there. Also, make sure you head over to tlpnetwork.com/news. We've been dropping some articles today on the latest space news. I think David dropped one in there about ISRO. If you joined us for our live launch coverage of that India launch, unfortunately, NV-02 is stuck in an elliptical orbit, and it's not looking like they're going to be able to recover it. And in a few weeks, it'll likely come back down here to Earth. Unfortunately, following a propulsion issue on board. But as always, we're going to answer your guys' comments and questions, so keep sending those in the chat. SpaceX has gone live, so we are going to patch them in as well, and once they begin their commentary, we will bring them up so you guys can listen in to updates on the timeline as things are progressing closer and closer to liftoff here today. Over at tlpnetwork.com, you can also stay up to date on the latest with the launch schedule, so make sure you head on over there as well.
Maxar-3 mission from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. While we usually have great views for our launch coverage, and unfortunately for our webcast and those of you joining us from the launch site, we have got a ton of fog today. While that's not great for viewing, we do have good news for launch. Weather is green for liftoff, and we are currently tracking less than a 5% chance of weather violation at our target liftoff time of 6:13 p.m. Eastern from Launch Complex 39A. My name is Ronnie Foreman, and I am a Senior Sales Manager here at SpaceX, joining you now from Hawthorne, California. Welcome to our live launch coverage of Maxar-3, SpaceX's 15th mission of 2025. Today, we're delivering 2 next-generation Worldview Legion satellites to orbit for Maxar intelligence. SpaceX launched the first set of Worldview Legion spacecraft in May of 2024, and the 3rd and 4th satellites in August 2024. Today's Maxar-3 mission will deliver the final 5th and 6th satellites to complete the first block of Maxar's next-generation Worldview Legion constellation. The additional satellites will ensure that Maxar continues to have the most advanced Earth imaging constellation on orbit for years to come. At T-minus 8.5 minutes, everything is looking good for an on-time liftoff. The range is ready to support, and as I mentioned earlier, the weather continues to be green, despite the fact that we don't have a great view of our launch pad, with less than a 5% chance of violation at our target T0 time. That being said, if for any reason we are unable to launch today, we do have a backup opportunity available tomorrow at 5:42 p.m. Eastern. Now with that, let's take a moment to learn a bit more about the Falcon 9 rocket supporting today's launch. Falcon 9 is the world's first orbital-class reusable rocket. Reusability allows SpaceX to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of access to space. The 2-stage rocket stands 229 feet tall behind that fog and generates more than 1.7 million pounds of thrust at sea level. The bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage, also referred to as the booster. After liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage accelerates through the thicker parts of the Earth's atmosphere and into space using 9 Merlin M1D engines. After stage separation, today the booster will land back on Earth at Landing Zone 1, just down the road from the launch pad at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The particular booster supporting today's mission will be returning to Earth for its 4th time. Above the first stage is the second stage, powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine that ignites after it separates from the first stage. Although quite similar to the Merlin engines on stage 1, the Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC for short,
engine chill has started.
There's confirmation of engine chill on board Falcon 9. The MVAC on board the second stage is optimized for the vacuum of space, and that's what will carry the 2 Worldview Legion satellites to orbit. The second stage engine can be restarted multiple times, which we'll have a great view of today, to place multiple payloads into different orbits. Located above the second stage is the payload fairing, which is the large barrel structure at the top of the rocket, which we're getting views of on your screen right now. At
Stage 1, fuel load complete.
There's confirmation that we've completed loading fuel on board stage 1. At 17 feet in diameter, that carbon composite payload fairing is what will protect our satellites on their way to orbit today. The 2 halves are then jettisoned approximately 3 minutes into flight. The fairing halves supporting today's launch are both also flight proven, with one half flying for its 23rd time and the other for its 21st. After separation from the second stage, both fairing halves will return to Earth again to be retrieved by our recovery ship, Bob, which is currently stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, while our countdown continues to go smoothly, let's take a look at this short video from our customer, Maxar Intelligence. just about T minus 4.5 minutes, Falcon 9 is tracking no issues, and our payloads continue to be healthy. There's confirmation that strongback retract has started. The strongback, or the transporter erector, you can just see on the bottom right-hand side of your screen there. That's the large truss structure next to Falcon 9. And we've been using that in part to help load propellants onboard Falcon 9 since T minus 35 minutes. We're targeting to finish that fuel loading at T minus 2 minutes. Now again, the range is ready to support, and weather is looking good for our liftoff time today, but if for some reason we do not launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 5:42 p.m. Eastern. In just about 10 seconds, we'll have the TE fully reclined away from Falcon 9. The first stage is connected to a launch mount at the base of the TE, and that structure is hinged to allow that retraction away from the rocket in preparation for launch. We've already heard it called the strongback by the launch team over the nets. We use the TE, or the strongback, both to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it into its vertical launch position. The TE is also what we use to route the vehicle's fluids, power, and telemetry umbilicals from the ground systems to the rocket and the payload until liftoff. Now, at this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Both the first and second stage should finish loading propellant about a minute apart from each other. We're standing by for that confirmation on board stage 1.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
Right on schedule, and we are expecting that fuel completion call for stage 2 at about T minus 2 minutes. This light venting that you can hear right now is totally normal. We do periodically vent the chilled gas from above the surface of the LOX tank overboard to maintain pressure in the tank as needed. Ordinarily, during a launch, you can see those white clouds form around the vehicle, but today the best indication that we have that everything is moving ahead smoothly is, of course, the countdown and timeline at the bottom of your screen and those healthy sounds from Falcon 9.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
There's that confirmation that liquid oxygen loading is complete on board our second stage. The next major milestone we're standing by for will be at T minus 60 seconds, when Falcon 9 will enter startup mode. This means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers will take over the launch countdown. Then, just inside of T minus 2 seconds, we'll light those M1D engines for liftoff. At this time, the 2 Worldview Legion satellites continue to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket.
Ground gas closeouts.
Confirmation of gas closeouts from our mission control team. Weather is still looking green, and the range is ready to support our T0 of 6:13 p.m. Eastern. And with that, we are proceeding into the final 1 minute and 10 seconds of our terminal count.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Confirmation of startup mode. And now we are standing by for our launch director to give our final go for launch.
Launch director, go for launch.
So with that, and just under T minus 40 seconds, all systems are go for the launch of Falcon 9 and our 2 Worldview Legion satellites.
T minus 30 seconds. T minus 15. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. Go Maxar, go Falcon.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
So in case you are just joining us, we are 32 seconds and counting, and Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center, carrying 2 Worldview Legion satellites for Maxar intelligence. In just a few seconds, we'll throttle the
Power
engine.
and telemetry nominal.
Confirmation there that everything's on the right track. And right now we're preparing to throttle the engines down ahead of max Q, or the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure on the rocket.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
With that call out, we know that Falcon 9 is moving faster than the speed of sound.
Max Q.
And there's confirmation of max Q. Now, during ascent, we tilt the engines. The technical term for this is called gimbaling, and that turns the rocket horizontally in what we call a gravity turn. Right now, the rocket is still going up, but we're also heading horizontally away from the launch pad. Our rocket
MVAC chill.
There's confirmation of MVAC chill on board our second stage. Now, our rocket needs to go about 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back down to Earth and reach orbit. You can keep an eye on that stage 1 telemetry in the bottom of your screen as we move toward that target insertion speed. Next, we'll have several events coming up in quick succession, and we should hear and see all of those called out by Mission Control, starting with main engine cutoff, or MECO, then stage separation, SES-1, first stage boost back burn, and fairing separation. MECO is where we will shut down all 9 M1D engines on board the first stage, followed quickly thereafter by stage separation, when the first and second stages of Falcon 9 separate from one another, and then we'll turn on
Main
the
engine cutoff.
MVAC engine for the first
Separation
time.
confirmed.
MVAC ignition. Stage 1 boost back startup.
So we have great views on your screen right now and confirmation from Mission Control that we've had MECO, Stage SEP, and SES-1. We also heard the call out, and on the left-hand side of your screen, we have great views of our boost back burn, which is what's currently putting the booster on a trajectory to head back toward Earth and touch down at landing zone 1. Next up, the fairing will jettison away from the second stage, as it's no longer needed now that we're in space, and the payloads no longer need that aerothermal protection.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Right on schedule. Those fairing halves are now headed back to Earth to be recovered by our ocean recovery ship, Bob.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
And there's confirmation of our stage 1 boost back burn shutdown. Now, at just about T plus 3.5 minutes into today's mission, the next major milestone we're standing by for is our first stage entry burn. Getting some great views on the left-hand side of your screen of that grid fin deployment right now, too. Those hypersonic grid fins are the primary mechanical mechanism by which we steer the rocket on its way back to Earth.
Nominal trajectories.
Nominal trajectories there for both our first and second stages. Again, in case you are just joining us, right now our first stage is on its way back to landing zone 1 at Kennedy Space Center, while stage 2 is on its way to orbit to deploy 2 Worldview Legion satellites for our customer Maxar intelligence. To start the entry burn at about T plus 6 minutes, we'll relight the 3 of the M1D engines on board stage 1, starting with the center engine, known as E9, followed shortly after by E1 and E5, which is similar to pumping the brakes to slow down the vehicle as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. We need to slow down to reduce re-entry forces, which then helps us to recover and reuse that first stage. During the entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing those Merlin engines, but we're still moving really fast. This causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases. Great views of it on your screen there right now. Those exhaust gases are also known as the rocket's plume. That in turn deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle surface. The soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses, and with each flight, the soot builds up a little more on the outside of the vehicle, giving it that flight-proven look. We are standing by with these incredible tracking shots for that entry burn begin at T plus 6 minutes and 11 seconds. Of course, reusability is key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, which enables more investments in critical scientific research. The Falcon 9 first stage supporting today's mission is about to perform this entry burn for the 4th time. And of course, meanwhile, up in space, our stage 2 continues to look good, and we'll keep bringing you those MVAC engine views as we have them.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
There's confirmation of entry burn begin.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And
Stage 1
confirmation
FTS is saved.
of entry burn shutdown. The engines on board the first and second stage are actually pretty similar. They're just optimized differently. The Merlins on the first stage are optimized for sea level, and these achieve 190,000 pounds of thrust each during both ascent and descent. At liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage has thrust greater than 5 747 airplanes at full power. The MVAC engine, which we
Nominal
have
trajectories.
a great view of on the right-hand side of your screen, and confirmation there that everything's on a nominal trajectory, has a much wider
Stage
nozzle.
1 transonic.
That wider nozzle allows us to be optimized to 220,500 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
We're hearing that sonic boom of
Stage
re-entry.
1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And confirmation that our Falcon 9
MVAC
booster
shutdown.
has touched back down on landing zone 1 at Kennedy Space Center, and that we have had successful MVAC shutdown on board stage 2. This was the 4th launch and landing for this first stage, and this landing marks SpaceX's 404th recovery of a SpaceX orbital class rocket, including
Nominal orbit insertion.
first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. And with that confirmation, we also know that stage 2 is on a good orbit up in space. So with that, stage 2 is embarking on its first coast phase, after which the MVAC engine will relight for a second time at about T plus 43 minutes. That will be followed by our first payload deploy today. We're going to take a break and leave you with some nice space tunes, but we'll see you back here in about 30 minutes. of the Maxar 3 mission. We have had a great mission so far today with an on-time liftoff at 6:13 p.m. Eastern from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center. After a successful stage separation, the first stage returned to Earth with a precision landing at Landing Zone 1 in Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Now we are minutes away from our expected payload deploy, but first, the MVAC engine on the second stage will reignite and shut down for the second time, so we're standing by for those callouts from Mission Control. The MVAC engine on your screen right now is on board Stage 2 of Falcon 9 and is capable of relight to deploy multiple payloads to multiple orbits on the same mission. And again, if you are just joining us today we are delivering 2 next-generation Worldview Legion satellites to orbit for our customer, Maxar Intelligence. Great views of SES-2 on your screen there, and we are expecting this burn to last about 20 seconds. Forgive me, 10 seconds.
Nominal orbit insertion.
There's confirmation from Mission Control that we've had nominal orbital insertion. SpaceX launched the first set of Worldview Legion satellites in May 2024, and the third and fourth satellites in August 2024. Today's Maxar 3 mission will deliver the final fifth and sixth satellites to complete the first block of Maxar's next-generation Worldview Legion constellation. The fifth satellite will be the first to be deployed, and we're expecting that at T plus 46 minutes and 57 seconds. Our customer today, Maxar Intelligence, is a geospatial intelligence company that delivers geospatial information for consumer navigation, mission planning, disaster response, defense intelligence, and more. The Maxar Legion constellation supports national security, defense, and humanitarian response for the U.S. and allied governments. When complete with 4 satellites in mid-inclination orbit and 6 satellites in sun-synchronous orbit, Maxar will be able to revisit some locations on Earth up to 15 times per day with unprecedented imagery resolution. We are standing by expecting that payload deploy in just about 2 minutes, and of course getting great views of MVAC up in space as we await for that payload deploy signal from our onboard flight computer and confirmation from Mission Control. As always, you can also follow along with our Stage 2 telemetry in the bottom of your screen. And you can see right now we're holding an orbit, which we heard called out from Mission Control that we're in the right orbit for this deployment as we prepare for that deployment of the 5th Worldview Legion satellite. Just about a minute until we're expecting that payload deployment call from Mission Control. Getting really awesome views on the left-hand side of your screen there of the curvature of the Earth behind the MVAC engine skirt. As I mentioned earlier in the broadcast today, the MVAC engine skirt is one of the things that helps us to optimize the performance of this engine in the vacuum of space. MVAC, of course, is short for Merlin Vacuum Engine, which is the engine on board Stage 2. And it's quite similar to the 9 engines on board the booster of Falcon 9, which moved the rocket through the Earth's atmosphere prior to stage separation.
Maxar's 5th Worldview Legion spacecraft deployment confirmed.
So there we heard the call out, and you can see successful deployment of that 5th Worldview Legion satellite on your screen. The second Worldview Legion satellite for today's mission will be deployed at about T+1 hour and 49 minutes. So with that, we'll take a short break and return for our third relight of that MVAC engine on the second stage at T+1 hour and 7 minutes. So we'll see you back here in just a few. MVAC engine on board the second stage. This roughly 10-second burn will be followed by another shutdown of MVAC, also known as Second Engine Cutoff 3, or SECO 3. Right now, we're standing by for those callouts, expecting them in just about 10 seconds. Great views of SES-3 up there in space with the Earth behind our MVAC engine. And confirmation of shutdown. With that, we're about 35 minutes away from a fourth ignition of the MVAC engine on the second stage, which will carry the payload to the orbit needed to deploy
Nominal orbit insertion.
the spacecraft. And there's confirmation of nominal orbital insertion. Again, that second deployment is our second and final deployment of today's mission. We'll take another break here for our next coast phase, but we'll see you back in about 34 minutes. Back for our ongoing coverage of the Maxar-3 mission, which is currently in progress. Our customer for today's mission is Maxar Intelligence, and we're currently coming up on the fourth relight of the MVAC engine on board the second stage, our last burn before our second and final satellite deployment of today's mission. SpaceX launched the first set of Worldview Legion satellites in May 2024, and the third and fourth satellites in August 2024. Today's Maxar-3 mission delivers the fifth and sixth satellites to complete the first block of Maxar's Worldview Legion constellation. The fifth satellite was the first to be deployed today, so we have just one more to go. Right now, we are standing by for second engine start 4 of our MVAC engine on board stage 2. Great views on your screen there of second engine start 4. And now, of course, we're standing by for a call out that we are in a
Nominal orbit insertion.
Right on schedule, nominal orbit. With that confirmation of the fourth relight and correct orbital insertion for this MVAC engine burn, we're going to take one more break before the final satellite for today's mission is deployed. We'll see you back here in just about 5 minutes. Good evening and welcome back to the MaxR3 mission. It has been a great mission so far today, and we are about 1 minute away from our second and final payload deploy. If you're just joining us, today we are delivering 2 next-generation Worldview Legion satellites to orbit for our customer Maxar Intelligence. The first deployment occurred just after T plus 46 minutes, and after that we saw a third and fourth ignition of the MVAC engine on the second stage in preparation for this final payload deploy. We're currently standing by for a call out and hopefully some great visuals of our final satellite deployment.
Maxar's 6th Worldview Legion spacecraft is now deployed.
With that confirmation and great visual, you can see the second successful deployment of this mission today.